I have never played Overwatch. In fact, I have never played any hero shooter. I rarely play multiplayer shooter games of any kind. However, I am a massive comic book superhero nerd. Because of that, I feel like I have something worthwhile to say about Marvel Rivals, a currently unreleased multiplayer hero shooter. I was lucky enough to play the game's closed beta test. Thanks again to Greenie for the code. And as you can tell by the video's runtime, I have quite a lot to say about it. Marvel Rivals features over 20 playable characters. You play as one of them in a team of 6 players, with no duplicates, so no full team of Iron Man, against an opposing team of 6, with both teams trying to complete an objective. Right now, the only objective types are protecting a payload and capturing a point. Both the unranked quick match mode and the ranked competitive mode have players participate in one of these 2 objective types, which immediately was weird to me because I thought that the deathmatch mode was the default base objective type in shooter games, but apparently not, I guess. Rivals does have something like that called Conquest, which is a separate unranked mode. But that feels very pushed off to the side, almost like a bonus mode. It's clearly not the main focus. Playable characters come in 3 different classes: Duelists, Vanguards, and Strategists. Duelists are the offensive attacker characters with high damage output but low health. Vanguards are the opposite, being defensive characters with low damage but high health. And Strategists are the supportive characters, more focused around healing their teammates. Discussing this game's gameplay is going to be a little difficult because, as I said before, I have no experience with Overwatch or other hero shooters, so maybe a lot of the stuff I say here will sound like heresy to those that are more familiar with the genre, but I have to be honest with my thoughts. An immediate issue I noticed with the characters in this game is that the movement feels really bad. Well, not necessarily bad, more accurately, a lot of characters move very slowly. Many heroes have some kind of mobility tool like Iron Man's flight or Spider-Man's web swing, but some characters like Magneto don't have anything. This is a huge problem because several characters are just so slow. These are supposed to be superheroes, but I could outrun half of them. This is at its worst after you respawn and then you have to slowly plod over to where the action is. It doesn't feel good. It really doesn't. Some characters who do have movement abilities still suffer a bit because of how limited these abilities are, like how Venom can only swing 1 time before he has to wait another 8 seconds until he can do it again. Oh, but he can crawl on walls! Yes, he can jankily crawl on walls. Wall crawling doesn't feel super amazing in this game. Things are just too inconsistent. You can get caught on things for seemingly no reason, smaller pieces of the environment that look climbable aren't, and I'm still not used to using the jump button to stick to walls, though I guess it could feel better if I had more time with the game. I think there need to be 2 changes made to nearly every character to improve this game's traversal. First, almost everyone who can't fly needs a double jump. Spider-Man has one, and it's a big reason as to why he feels much better to control than a lot of other characters. Black Panther also has a double jump, but his can only be done after climbing up a wall. And it has a cooldown too? What? Huh? Iron Man can fly, but this guy has a cooldown on a rinky-dink double jump he can only use after performing another action? What? The second thing is Luna Snow. She automatically enters a faster running state after moving forward for a set period of time, which also gives her a higher jump. Why isn't this something that most non-flyers have? It's not like she even runs that much faster, so I don't think this would cause problems of characters zipping around the map. This would really only make it easier for players to get back into the action after respawning. With those additions and fixing the wall crawling, I think the movement would be in a much better place. More importantly, the cast would feel a lot more powerful and appropriately super. Attacks in this game lack a certain amount of impact. While the crosshair does change when you hit something and there are different sound effects for when you land a hit, it's still not quite good enough. There needs to be a little something more. This lack of feedback is particularly bad with the melee attacks. Several characters in this game, like Spider-Man and Hulk, have melee attacks as their primary attack, but these melee attacks don't feel great to use. The animations are a bit weightless. They look as though the characters are simply throwing their limbs around and not like they're actually trying to hit something. Their damage isn't great either, which made me very resistant to using these melee focused characters since the reward didn't seem to be worth the risk. But as it turns out, every character in the game has a melee attack. This is something that I found out by complete accident, as the game itself does not tell you this, not in the tutorial, nor these melee moves mentioned in the skill list. If you're wondering about the characters who already use melee for their primary attack, they do the same action when doing the universal melee attack, except for Black Panther and Magic, who have different and seemingly worse melee attacks instead. I don't get what the point of these universal melee attacks are. In most shooters that I've played, melee attacks are typically very strong. They're inherently risky because you have to get so close to use them, but the reward is high since you can wipe out an opponent quickly if you manage to use them successfully. They're also useful in games that have limited ammo. You can choose to conserve ammo by going for a melee kill, and when you're completely out of ammo, your melee option remains as a last resort. But here, the melee attacks are really weak and ammo isn't a concern, so why are they here? These melee attacks remind me most of the Fortnite pickaxe. The pickaxe barely does damage, and the animation for the swing is a little limp, so it doesn't feel great to use on an enemy, and you probably wouldn't want to do that anyway since the damage is so low. But that thing still has a purpose. The environments in Fortnite are pretty much all destructible, and it's best to use the pickaxe to break things in the environment since ammo is finite. But Rivals doesn't have destructible environments on the level of Fortnite, nor is ammo limited, so again, why are these melee attacks here? I really do think the melee attacks were a missed opportunity. They should have been more carefully integrated into the characters' movesets, but as they are, they feel like an afterthought. I mentioned that this game doesn't have Fortnite's level of destructible environments, but Rivals does feature destructible environments. Certain parts of the environment can be destroyed. There's a button you can press to see all the pieces in the stage that you can wreck. This is a neat system, but I don't think the game takes it far enough. Most of the environments can't be destroyed. This is probably due to either some kind of technical limitation or balancing concerns, but it is a shame that most of the environment remains static. The stuff you can destroy feels largely superfluous. The only area I can think of that actually affected my tactics depending on its destroyed status was this area in the Capture the Point mission. When intact, I can walk around on it and shoot from higher ground even if I'm not using a flying character. But when it gets destroyed, I plummet down and I'm forced to fight out in the open. That's pretty cool, but again, this was the only area where I felt the destructible environments mattered. Outside of that, the mechanic is mostly decorative. Ideally, this game should have been designed in a way that there wouldn't have been a need for a button to show the destructible portions of the environment, because basically all of the environment would be destructible. I don't think this would have affected game balance too much because the environments do get restored after a period of time. I also think it would have been cool if different characters could destroy things faster than others. For example, if it took Star-Lord like 3 full clips to break a wall, while it only takes Hulk 1 punch to do the same. That would have further distinguished the characters and given them different uses outside of combat. The next thing I want to talk about is an issue with aiming. This is something that I didn't notice myself. I saw a post on Reddit about it that was really informative and thought I'd bring it up here. The original Reddit post will be linked in the description, and I recommend you read it if you want more info on this. Essentially, attacks don't emit from the camera, they emit from the character. Here's a diagram included in that Reddit post that shows what this means. This leads to issues at closer range where attacks become inconsistent to land. This sort of thing doesn't affect me at all since I have bad aim and would probably miss regardless, but I can definitely see this being an issue for people that are actually good at shooters. Now it's time to talk about the characters. I have so much to say about all the different heroes and how they're handled here that I had to cut it out of this script and make a separate one just for that. So in this video, I'll discuss things more generally. Most of the cast of Marvel Rivals, in my opinion, of course, feel too weak. Compared to other media where these characters are capable of doing so much, the heroes here feel overly constrained and limited in order to fit into this type of game. The worst example of this is probably Hulk. From what I've seen online, most of the people that got to play Rivals agree that Hulk is one of the worst characters, if not the worst. His standard punches don't deal that much damage, and they don't feel good either because none of the melee attacks in this game feel good. Most of his other abilities like his Gamma Force Field and Gamma Loogie don't even make sense for the Hulk to have. He may be the worst example, but it's not just him. Nearly every character has something about them that doesn't feel right. For some of them, it's just the movement. Some of them feel like they're missing something. Some only feel complete with team-ups. But bottom line, most of them don't feel great. There are two characters that I think are the best adapted from the source material into this game. The first is Spider-Man. Playing him really makes you feel like Spider-Man. He's appropriately mobile and nimble, even with the at times janky wall crawling. He can even run downwards and on ceilings, something the character can't do in the recent dedicated Spider-Man games. The web swinging is surprisingly good, especially if you turn off the easy automatic swinging in the character's specific settings. His melee attacks do lack a little oomph to them, but that's really the only issue with him. The other character that I think is best adapted, and the one that is far more important for this discussion, is Punisher. Punisher is a dude with a gun, so it shouldn't be surprising that he'd translate well to a shooter game. But therein lies the problem. He translates too well. A casual look at any online Marvel Rivals discourse will tell you that Punisher is the strongest character in the game. And it's true, he is. But I don't think he's the best because he's too strong. I think he's the best because everyone else is so weak. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that Punisher is perfectly balanced. The fire rate of his shotgun is way too fast, making it way too easy to use. His turret, being able to spin a full 360 degrees, is also way too generous. It should only turn 180 degrees relative to where he placed it. But even if you made those changes, hell, even if you nerfed every single tool he has, Punisher would still be the best character in the game. The reason for this is simple. He's a shooter game character. He functions as you would expect him to. You shoot things with him, and that's that. So many other characters have needlessly complicated game plans, relying on multiple different abilities, all to result in mediocre damage, like how Black Panther needs to mark enemies with his spear to then use his other attacks, or how Thor has like 3 different restrictions on using his different hammer abilities. All of this for middling results, while Punisher just shoots things and he wins. What should be happening is that Punisher is a nice, basic character for people to use when they first start playing and think that everyone else's movement and abilities are too complicated. He'd be good to pick up and play, easy to understand. But then, as a player gets better and experiments with other heroes and figures them out, they start to perform better with the other characters because their myriad of abilities make them more powerful than Punisher when used correctly. What is instead happening is that Punisher is really strong right out of the gate, and everyone else sucks. So there's no point where you graduate to the other more complex characters, because even when you learn the more complex characters, you'll find out that they still aren't very strong. So yes, you could nerf Punisher into the ground, but I don't think that would solve the issue. I would prefer to see sweeping buffs for the rest of the cast and only minor nerfs to Punisher. Really quickly, since we're on the topic of buffs and nerfs, I want to say that the balance patch notes for this game are really bad. To be fair, we've only seen one of them, but that doesn't change that the one we've seen was really bad. Take a look at this snippet of the balance patch notes for the closed beta. The bit here for Penny isn't terrible. It says that her attack speed has been made faster. There aren't any specifics as to how much faster it is compared to how it originally was, but at least it tells us something. But then look at this note for Doctor Strange. I'll read it out for you. We've recalibrated Doctor Strange's damage capabilities to better resonate with his Vanguard role, enhancing his power on the front lines. What the hell does that even mean? Like seriously, what? This could mean anything. Are his attacks faster? Is their damage higher? Is his ammo count higher? I don't know. They desperately need to include specific numbers in their balance notes so that we can tell exactly what was changed. These vague, flowery balance descriptions are not helpful at all. A rather unique feature Marvel Rivals has, or at least I think it's unique. I haven't heard of any other hero shooter that does this, but again, I don't play them, so I could be wrong. A rather unique feature Marvel Rivals has is hero team-ups. If a certain combination of heroes is present on a team, then they will get a bonus. What this bonus is depends on the characters and the team up. There are essentially two different types of hero team-ups. The first are passive effects, things that improve the character in some way without adding anything new. Hulk's team-up with Doctor Strange and Iron Man is an example of this. It boosts Strange's AoE attack and Iron Man's suit overdrive, and that's all. The second, and far more problematic type of team-up, is the one that grants a new ability to a character. An example of this is Magic's team-up with Black Panther. It gives them both the ability— wait, hold on, why do these two have a team-up power together? All the other team-ups are characters that are associated with each other, or at the very least, thematically similar, but these two? This is the least logical combination here. I am certain that the developers realized these two didn't have a team-up and invented this so that they wouldn't be left out. Anyway, this team-up gives both characters the ability to create portals that they can travel through for a short period of time. This is a problem for two reasons. To start with, a character will feel weaker without this ability, which sucks. And more importantly, this can force people to play characters they didn't want to use in order to have the team-up ability. The worst example of this is Magneto. Normally, Magneto is a fairly underwhelming character, having decent defensive abilities but being quite limited on offense. But when paired with Scarlet Witch, Magneto gains a new sword attack that shoots out wide-spreading, highly damaging energy slashes. This is an incredibly powerful ability, one that completely changes how you would use Magneto to the point that he feels flat out incomplete without it. And there's no guarantee you'll be able to use it in a match unless you force someone on your team to use Scarlet Witch. I understand that they are trying to incorporate more synergistic elements to this game to really sell the team-based focus, but I don't think this was the right way to do it. This feels like a very artificial way to encourage character combos. I think it would be a lot better if characters were chosen because their inherent abilities complemented each other, and not because of a predetermined team-up power that gives them an extra tool that they probably should have just had to begin with. Another bizarre mechanic in this game is seasonal bonuses. These are stat boosts given to certain characters for the duration of the season. Of course, this game is still in beta, so for now, these bonuses only applied for the beta duration. This little yellow symbol on the bottom right corner of the character's portrait indicates that they have a seasonal bonus. From what I can tell, it gives duelists higher damage, vanguards higher health, and strategists greater healing. I said that this is a bizarre mechanic for multiple reasons. First of all, there is hardly anything in the game that calls attention to these bonuses. There's the little symbol on the character portraits, but there's no in-game mention of the system that would call attention to it. No seasonal bonus screen that explains the mechanic and lists all the characters that receive it for the season. The game's social media hasn't mentioned it either. It's not a widely publicized feature. I wouldn't be surprised if there are people who played through the entire beta without even noticing these things. To actually view the bonuses themselves, you have to either pull up the character move list screen or the team up screen. Not sure why it's even on the team up screen though, since that gives the impression that this bonus is only active during the team up, which is not the case. Another reason that this is so weird is that Rivals is still in beta. The whole point of alpha tests and beta tests for games should be to test things and receive feedback from real players before release. And it is really difficult for players to give meaningful feedback on character balancing if many of the characters are arbitrarily stronger than they normally would be. The clearest example of this might be Venom. He's extremely hard to kill, and as a result, many people say he's one of the best tanks in the game. But part of the reason he's so tanky is that he has 150 extra health due to the seasonal bonus. I think the idea behind the seasonal bonus is that the developers want to give people incentives to play other characters. Each season, a different batch of characters get boosted, so you're more willing to switch off your main and try someone else. The issue that I see happening with this system in the future is that it will lead to a decrease in character variety, as players will only use the seasonally boosted characters. So I don't like this system. I think it's a crutch to try and artificially enforce greater character variety. I think their focus should instead be on more precise balancing for the whole cast to make all of them fun to use. That, I think, would be the greatest way to encourage everyone to vary up their selected characters. But I can't say for sure, because we don't know how much this seasonal bonus will affect the game's meta per season. The seasonal bonuses never changed in this beta, so we can't see how players will react to a change in bonuses. That seems like a massive oversight to me, since again, the whole point of a beta should be to test this sort of thing and figure it out. But because the beta didn't let us see the full effects of this system, all I can do is speculate. Something I've seen quite a lot of people say about Marvel Rivals is that it could be released as a full game right now and be in a good spot. I don't really agree with that. Don't get me wrong, Rivals is technically impressive. I only had matches disconnect 2 or 3 times. The game only crashed on me once. Live, on stream, but then never again in all the hours I spent with the game afterwards. And the only real glitch I encountered was getting stuck on a ceiling for a little bit. And when it comes to the game's presentation, there are so many flourishes here, like the MVP animations and the little animation that plays when you hover your cursor over the characters, and it's super cool how you can view the highlights of everyone on your team after a match is over. There's a lot of polish here, especially compared to something like Multiverses. So I get that Rivals clearly has a ton of work placed into it, and its visuals are dazzling, but it is severely lacking in content. While there are a lot of playable characters, there isn't much else here. There are only 2 real mission types. There are 4 maps, but really only 3 since both of the Asgard ones look the same. And even the 2 2099 maps have a bit of overlap in their visuals with how similar their colors are. Each character only having 1 alternate skin and barely any emotes is also not going to satisfy people who would be willing to drop money on this thing. Which leads to my next point, the monetization. We don't know how Rivals will be monetized. Obviously they'll sell cosmetics, but we don't know if they'll charge for new characters as well. Whichever direction they go in, I know it'll upset people, but this kind of thing is the price we have to pay for supposedly free games. The only thing about the monetization that I feel as though I can freely criticize is the Battle Pass. The beta had a built-in Battle Pass that was available to all players, which was nice, but you could only progress it by completing missions, which was not nice. If this method of progression continues into the full release, then it will be a problem. People have already jumped to defend how Rivals handles its Battle Pass, saying that people should only play the game because it's fun and not to progress a Battle Pass. That's easy to say now, where the beta's Battle Pass was free, but once the game releases in full and the Battle Pass costs real money, I think it'll be more than fair for people to demand compensation for their time towards the thing they spent money on. We've already seen how people react to this sort of thing with Multiverses, which only awarded Battle Pass progression through missions at launch. It was widely criticized for that, and they did eventually add in Battle Pass XP for every match. I'm really hoping that Rivals skips this debacle entirely and just has Battle Pass XP granted for every match to start with. The other issue I have with this game's Battle Pass is that they seem to be fine with having skins and other cosmetics be exclusively available in the Battle Pass, weaponizing fear of missing out, or FOMO, to increase profits. Fortnite is rather infamous for doing this, having cosmetics in the Battle Pass that are never available afterwards, many of them actually being Marvel skins, like Spider-Man, who I will never be able to obtain because I didn't buy the Battle Pass years ago. Rivals seems to be going this same FOMO route, with their Cyan Venom skin being exclusive to this beta's Battle Pass. There is still time to change this for the game's full release, and even Fortnite seems to be changing its approach to Battle Pass exclusivity. But as of right now, I am less than optimistic about how Rivals will handle this. I will eventually do a more in-depth video discussing the costumes of this game, once Rivals fully releases and there's no fear of characters getting their designs changed. I will make one. For now though, I'll only give a handful of quicker and more general thoughts on the costumes and character designs. Nearly every character here has an appealing default design. Rivals strikes a very difficult balance between trying new ideas while sticking to what makes these characters work, and also making sure they look cool and strong and heroic. For me, the standouts and the best examples of this are Magneto and Star-Lord. Both of them look very different to how we're used to seeing them, yet still retain their most iconic elements and look damn good doing so. The only default designs I did not like were Namor and Spider-Man. Spider-Man's outfit is just too boring. It's as though every other modern redesign of the classic Spider-Man suit was thrown into a blender and this was the result. Namor, on the other hand, I think was just doing too much and stepped a bit too far from the character's usual design. Really, it's just the hair. I don't think bleached extensions work on this guy, at all. I know that Namor is really prideful and vain, but he's also a warrior king with a lot of stuff going on, so I just can't imagine him taking the time out of his day to get his hair dyed like this. I think keeping his hair color as typical uniform black with a simpler tied back hairstyle would have been a lot better. That's all I have to say about the default designs for now. When it comes to the alternate suits, unfortunately I have less charitable thoughts. Most of the alternate suits here are just recolors. This isn't a huge problem since this is a beta, and they'll most likely be the least expensive types of cosmetic on offer at release. I am disappointed though in how these are counted as alternate suits and not alternate styles for the unique suits. Depending on how this game progresses, this could lead to them creating 100 recolors for all the characters that take up a bunch of inventory space. Getting to the alternate costumes that are actually different designs, my main issue with them is how comic adaptations are handled. Many of the comic-based costumes say that they're based on a look from the comics, even including the comic name and issue number that they're pulling from, only for the suit itself to have nearly nothing in common with its source material. An example of this is Iron Man's 1872 costume. This suit is specifically listed as being the same suit from 1872 issue 3. This is what that suit looked like in the comic. As you can clearly see, these two costumes are radically different. Outside of the steam-powered aesthetic, there is nothing that ties them together. To be clear, I'm not saying that the suit in Rivals is bad. It's a fine enough suit. The issue is that this is a wholly original design that for no reason at all is credited as a completely different suit from the comic books. This isn't a one-off problem either. All of what I just said also applies to Punisher's Thunderbolt suit, which shares the colors of the suit from the comics, while everything else about it has been completely reinvented. Again, I need to stress that the designs in Rivals are not bad. Unlike Marvel's Avengers, where the suits looked cheap, uninspired, and downright ugly regardless of the source material, the costumes in Rivals are all aesthetically pleasing. I just don't like how they're being labeled as things from the comics when they very clearly aren't. If Iron Man's 1872 suit and Punisher's Thunderbolt suit were billed as original designs with different names, then I wouldn't be saying any of this. I would just say that the game's designs are cool and move on to the next section. But I have to complain here because there are some designs from the comics that I really like and would love to see in this game's art style, but I really don't want them to invent an entirely new design and slap the name of a comic suit onto it. Because if they do that, that means the original comic design that I like will never actually make it into the game. A lot of suits for Rivals were leaked a while ago, and many of them only affirm the same design philosophy, which is unfortunate. But there's still time to change things, so I really do wish that going forward they make a clearer separation between costumes from the comics and costumes that are original. I know that they can do it, as some outfits like President Loki and Master of the Sun Star-Lord stick pretty close to the source material with only a respectable amount of additions and differences. Whereas something like 2099 Spider-Punk is an original design that is labeled as such instead of pretending to be the original Spider-Punk suit from the comic books. If things were more like that going forward, then I'd be happy. It certainly sounds like there's a lot of negatives here, but that's because I think the most important part of a critique is to criticize. The problematic parts are the things that need to be addressed the most, which is why they have the most time dedicated to them. But there are plenty of positives here. Marvel Rivals is a game that I had a lot of fun with. It's not the type of game that I usually play, but even then I grew to like it quite easily. There's a wild variety of characters, including big names like Iron Man, Hulk, and Thor, but also smaller and more obscure picks like Luna Snow and Jeff the Landshark. Rivals boasts incredibly dynamic visuals to the point that I feel silly even addressing that because of how obviously great the game looks. And most importantly, this game provides the feeling of inhabiting the Marvel world with these Marvel characters. Even with all my issues with the characters and their abilities, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't fun to play as them. It's not hard to see that this game will be very successful, but that doesn't mean the game is perfect. There's still a long way to go before this evolves from just another hero shooter into a true super hero shooter. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, please like, please comment, please like and subscribe, please. Man, I really hope they add Ghost Rider.